Hello, my name is Justin Popkowski. I hope y'all are all having a great time of your day whenever you're hearing this recording. My presentation today is going to be over managing computer assets in a corporation. Uh, the title might scare you, and it might sound a bit complicated, but really all this title means is how you manage and secure information systems like computers, anything that has data on it that is valuable to an organization. There's a lot that goes into it, and I'm just going to try and give a brief overview of everything that goes on behind the scenes with IT. So, a little bit of background about me. I am getting a Bachelor of Science in Computer Information Systems. I was first on a BBA, but I switched in the middle of my sophomore year. Have a minor in accounting, and I currently work at the Tarleton Help Desk. I am a field technician, and I typically work with faculty and staff, and so I usually solve their problems when it comes to like Outlook issues, mapping drives. I do a lot of things. This summer, I have an internship at a company called RSM US LLC. And this job is in their security, privacy, and risk team, specifically with compliance and governance. Essentially, all you need to grab from that, though, is it's an IT security job. And I also currently have three industry related certifications. And in IT, certifications are as helpful as experience is. And so having these certifications definitely makes a big deal. So the general goal of this presentation is to provide a general overview of how computer assets are managed in a larger corporation. The typical everyday person just expects that computers work as they're intended and don't really consider everything that goes on behind the scenes that gets to that end product. The fact of the matter is that things are easy because the IT guys make it easy. And sometimes, at least I see it all the time at help desk, is people tend to get used to it and not really understand all the hard work that goes on to make everything work. So I just wanted to have the create this presentation to educate everyone. It's because you're probably going to be working at some sort of company and they will all have an IT field. So I'm just hoping you guys have a better appreciation from what goes on behind the scenes and how everything works. So here's a general outline of an information systems organization. I pulled this photo from one of my textbooks. I personally don't really like this diagram because it doesn't show what an organization is. This is not a cut and paste diagram of what an IT infrastructure is. Like this is definitely not what Tarleton has. But this is considered the typical model, at least by my systems analysis and design textbook. So you have three subcategories or subdepartments that all talk to the chief information officer. And of course, there's other types of models. It all really just depends on the organization. For Tarleton, we have the server team slash telecom. They mess with our servers and they mess with networking, which and phones. Our application development team, of course, messes with applications. I haven't really talked with them that much. I don't really know exactly what they do, but I think they correspond with the server team because there's a lot of our applications that reside upon servers to be able to get like licensing or whatever. We also have the security team, and the security team is a quite a small team. It's roughly 3 or 4 people. I There used to be one other guy, but he just left to go to a hospital, work at a hospital, and he it just lower the ranks for the security team until they can find someone to hire. But the security team is very vital, especially for Tarleton, because you have to follow federal and state guidelines and be in compliance with encrypting data like your education documents, like your phone number, your address, zip code, stuff like that. And finally, we at Tarleton, we have the user services, and that's the department I'm in. And we are the guys that talk to the end users. That's why it's called user services. So the first department that we're going to look at is the operations department. They are responsible for the daily management and upkeep of the system infrastructure. They always try to improve in some ways and try and lower costs, make response times faster, increase the security, or make things just easier. Operations, like a typical day-to-day way that people in operations are doing, is updating and patching software and resetting passwords. But they have bigger projects. They have bigger things like rolling out a new server that they want to use to make sure that there's not too much uh, overhead on one server and it's not able to keep up with everyone trying to connect to it. Another way of saying that, or a good example, is whenever you're registering for classes. Because so many people at one time are trying to register for classes, it bogs down the server. And what Operation should be doing is planning ahead of time and perhaps rent some extra computing power so that their services don't go down whenever people start registering for classes. But Tarleton, they're not a corporation, and so they might not be able to afford those types of things. So these are some of the typical roles that you can see in operations. You have cloud development. That's a big one nowadays, and you can make six figures easily being in cloud. It's just going to keep becoming more and more important as things go on. You have web servers in the cloud. Now Active Directory is in the cloud. It's what you use to authenticate whenever you log into your computer. Um, there's cloud storage like OneDrive or Simplicity or Dropbox. Um, there's now cloud operating systems essentially where you can log in to a website and have a full-blown computer. There's a lot of things, and it's going to keep becoming more and more amazing and crazy. Next is server administration, and this is a job position or role that's been around for decades. And I've listed a few of the typical things that a server admin or sysadmin deals with during their day-to-day work, but I don't expect y'all to know all of those protocols or those types of roles in a server. They also deal with networking, wired and wireless. When you have such a big campus or building like Tarleton, you have to put a lot of effort into your networking. You can't just have your home router and expect it to reach from the business building to the dining hall. You have to go ahead and install like access points, and you have to make sure they're secured so a hacker doesn't try and get onto your network and fool around and steal data and stuff. So there's a lot that goes on. And as I just alluded to, there's also security. Though at Tarleton, as I said, it's a whole dedicated team. And really, security is becoming a bigger and bigger part, especially with COVID and how things have been. And finally, we have the telecommunications role or position. These people mainly do deal with video conferencing and phone calls. They're the people that mess with our Cisco phones. They just make sure that your number is registered to you There's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes, but I haven't been trained on it, so I don't have enough knowledge to really convey what all goes on. Next is the development role, and this department is responsible for creating new software and systems for organizational needs. This department varies drastically depending on the business's budget and primarily involves coding. Personally, I don't really like this department being part of the information systems model because development, like I said, vastly varies because on how big your budget is for the company. Like a middle-sized company or a middle-sized business can't afford a development team. They might hire one out for a specific application or a specific reason that they need a developer. Most likely it would be for whenever they're trying to create a website. And once that website is created, they don't need the developer anymore. So they just hire him for a month or whatever until he codes the application. But yeah, it varies. Tarleton doesn't really have a huge development team. And whenever I've heard about developers, they're just hired on by other departments in Tarleton when they need like a data analyst or whenever they need someone to edit their portion of the Tarleton website. And so this department is like, it can vary drastically. So some of the primary roles that you see for in the development department are self-explanatory. Like web developer creates websites, database developer creates databases, application developer creates applications, a systems analyst, that specific position or job, they are primarily responsible with communicating between users and the coders. They essentially translate the user's needs into tech guru. And so it's a valuable job, but you need to be able to know technology and you need to be able to communicate effectively both in user speak and tech speak. And so it's not for everyone, and you have to be able to communicate pretty well. And finally, I added to development vendors. Vendors are very important, and I believe that information systems model didn't give the proper emphasis to vendors. The fact of the matter is that a lot of the software that companies use are designed by external sources. For instance, Microsoft is our vendor for Windows. They are the vendors that supply us with operating systems. Same thing with the Adobe suite. We do not code Adobe Creative Cloud and Photoshop. We buy them. And even in the largest of corporations, it's just dumb to go ahead and buy or design your own in-house software when there's something perfectly um, doable for your uses from an external vendor that you can just buy. It's because it'll cost way too much money to develop it in-house when you can just simply buy it and it's quicker. And this is typically what middle-sized businesses do. They don't pay for developers all the time. They just buy solutions that someone has already designed. Finally, the last department from the information systems model is the support department, and they primarily interact with the end user. Some of the roles that I've listed here, actually all of the roles, are roles that are in our Tarleton Help Desk. Of course, there's more, but these are real life examples, I guess, from my personal experience of roles that you see in support. I am a field tech. We deal with going out to people's like offices or wherever they're located and fixing the issue in person. But of course, with COVID, it's become a bit more remote. And so My job is a mixture of remoting in the computers and being face to face. It really depends on the issue. Printer team is solely for printers. Everyone in IT, or most people in IT, hate printers. They are a pain in the butt, and that is why we have a dedicated team to deal with them. Is because if the field techs had to work on printers in addition to the tickets that they normally dealt with, we would be going 3 times slower than what we currently our work speed is at, because just printers are not our forte and they're not fun. And finally, we have call center. In Tarleton, we only have 2 or 3 people working at call center at one time. But you might see in big corporations, you might have like a whole floor dedicated call center, or it might be outsourced. Call center is the first line of defense. Whenever someone has a problem, they call and they get greeted with the call center. At Tarleton, our call center tries to deal with some of the easier problems that you might come up with. And if they're unable to fix them, or if it takes too long, it gets escalated to the field techs or printer team, though it doesn't happen that often. We also have the refresh team. They are responsible for replacing computers whenever it's time to renew them. It happens every 4 years or so. I didn't list that one. So all of these departments in a good IT infrastructure should interact with each other, because the goal of IT is to streamline the experience, to make things easier for the end user. And it requires collaboration, because if you try doing something like run an update to antivirus, and the security team knows that the antivirus is going to break certain settings on the computer or cause issues, they should know about it. They should communicate these things beforehand. That's what a good business IT infrastructure does. And that's why there are things like change management, which is where they document whenever a machine is going to be updated, or whenever they're going to change a particular setting on a router or switch. Because when something breaks, there needs to be a chain of events that are writing or documents that show that this thing was thought of ahead of time before things broke. And things have broken in the past. And it's good to have that documentation so that someone doesn't get fired. So I hope you all learned a few new things about IT, about the realm of what goes on behind the scenes. And I hope that you can use this knowledge to bring it to your other corporation and understand like what goes on. And I thank you for listening to me. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.